Go on. I'm waiting.
I never was. Am always to be. No one ever saw me, nor ever will. And yet I am the confidence of all who live and breathe. What am I?
This is 2016's Gods of Egypt, an American action fantasy adventure shot in Australia, chronicling a tale very loosely based off an Egyptian mythological tale. The tale in question being the contendings of Set and Horus found in the first 16 pages of the Chester Beatty Papyri. With a budget of $140 million, grossing just a little over $150 million, and 5 nominations at the Razzies, this film was regarded as one of 2016's biggest blockbuster flops.
Your journey has just begun.
But how exactly did a feature-length film with such robust financial backing, a seemingly fresh setting, and a star-studded cast end up with such a middling reputation? Well, whilst we get into that, this pantheon does accept tokens in the form of subscriptions, so feel free to hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this. As earlier stated, Paramount's Gods of Egypt is a loose adaptation of the contendings of Set and Horus. However, the film and the mythological story's similarities are very superficial. Actually, the similarity between the two lies in the conflict between Set and Horus over the determination of the king's succession from Osiris and, well, just that.
Not worth the papyrus it's written on.
What does it matter?
Which for the film's nearly 2-hour runtime lasts for just about 10 minutes spread across 2 very CGI heavy confrontations in the first and third acts of the film. The rest of the film is an equally CGI heavy, flat-earth-trotting buddy adventure between Horus and a mortal thief, Beck, both of whom use each other to satisfy their own versions of 2 of the most basic character motivations, revenge and love. And yeah, just from that very bare-bone rundown of the film, every promise of what should be good or should be bad about this movie is surely fulfilled. The story hinges itself on 2 major plotlines. The first of which being the deity Horus's revenge story as against his uncle Set, who kills his father Osiris during his coronation ceremony. The second of which being the theme of love, which is carried by our second protagonist, the non-believer and thief, Beck, who will serve gods that he does not believe in and even go to the afterlife and back just for his love Zaya. And just a minor tangent, how are you an unbeliever in a world where 9-foot gods, plural, live amongst you? It just... Moving on, circumstances of the ocular point of view, or lack thereof, on Horus's end, and those of the I need to resurrect my girlfriend on Beck's end, force these two into an unholy alliance where they need to venture the entirety of the flat earth to find solutions to their very unique problems.
Run faster! I can't! Run faster! I can't!
The story, per the director, takes inspiration from films such as The Guns of Navarone, Lawrence of Arabia, The Man Who Would Be King, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and several of Sergio Leone's westerns. And to a keen eye, these inspirations are very transparent in the final product. Which is to say that several of these scenes are scenes that you have seen earlier and probably executed even better than they are in this film. Aside from the storytelling, the visuals and cinematography of this film are impressive. At times, the film is heavily reliant on CGI with the computer-generated imagery ranging from very impressive whilst in the small scale to very distracting when it forms the entire basis and background of scenes and set pieces, which is unfortunately a huge chunk of the film's runtime. Now, I did not watch this film in 3D when it came out, and neither am I rewatching it in 3D for obvious reasons, so I generally have no idea on how the visuals actually worked in the silver screen in 3D, but on the silver screen in non-3D and even on my TV screen, the visuals have the ability to suck you right into a scene, then kick you right back out, based solely off the variations of the quality in their visuals. Before I close out this segment, it is imperative that I mention that this film is not short of great ideas which build upon the lore and deepen the world building. For all intents and purposes, as far as storytelling and visuals are concerned, this film is not as horrible as early criticisms levied against it would make it out to be. It is, by far, not the best story out there. It is also not the most horrible production ever put out to screen. So what exactly are the other components that gave this film such vitriol? With that, we move to the characters, and this component is actually twofold. Firstly, being the characters in story. For those who have seen the film, a confession can be made that none of these performances are phoned in. Unfortunately, the characters themselves are written to be very one-dimensional. And in speaking of the writing of the characters themselves, one has to also address the writing of the dialogue that they were given to deliver, which more often than not was very generic.
I looked up to you.
Of course you did.
This is to say, they were given blockbuster lines, which are lines that are recycled from film to film with very limited variations.
Get out. But you
Have to help us! Careful. I outnumber you.
And it can be argued that adding this to characters who are already deemed to be flat definitively hurt the reception of the film. However, it is indubitably the second aspect of the character component that actually killed this film's reputation before it could be received, and that is in its casting. It would be insane to purport that a refined cast with names such as Gerard Butler, Nicolaj Coster-Waldau, Brenton Thwaites, Elodie Young, Courtney Eaton, Chadwick Boseman, Brian Brown, and Geoffrey Rush would ever be the cause of audience backlash. However, in this case, it was. For context, this was the mid-2010s, a period in which the 2015 Oscar Awards had all 20 nominated actors being of Caucasian persuasion. The representation of diverse nominees at the time was only at 8%.
The big question is, though, did any black movies really deserve to get nominated this year?
Well, let me ask you, what did you like this year?
Oh, that was easy for me. I mean, Creed was one of my favorite movies.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Michael B. Jordan was fantastic. Ryan Coogler did an amazing job directing it.
Tessa Thompson was good, yeah. And you know who got nominated? Sylvester Stallone, the only white dude in the whole movie.
And Ridley Scott had just released Exodus, Gods and Kings with a cast of similar persuasion. Yes, this was the Oscars so white era, and Lionsgate had just okayed a project under the name Gods of Egypt with what audiences deemed to be ethnically inaccurate casting. Claims which held a well of legitimacy considering that there was no Egyptian representation on screen. Heck, there was no African representation on screen. And seemingly behind the screen, the only form of Egyptian or African representation came from the director himself, who was born in Egypt to Greek parents and moved by the age of 3. Long story short, audiences felt hard done. And the production company, alongside the director, issued their apologies to the public following their announcement of the casting. In a different interview, Proyas cited a shortage of English-speaking Egyptian actors, production practicalities, Australia's limitations on imported actors, and studio requirements for the casting of box office draws as the restrictions that he faced whilst conducting his casting. And to address these points, there might have been a few on-hand solutions that the director and the studio could have used to avoid the backlash. Primarily, no audience was expecting an all-Egyptian cast. In fact, they only needed a few faces for the representation from the general area. And by general area, I mean that they did not even require an Egyptian on screen. It would be perfect if they could source one, but ideally, a Moroccan, a Tunisian, an Algerian, any of the North Africans would have actually sufficed. And I am willing to hedge my bets that any African representation would have been welcome. This would have alleviated the strain of specialized casting considering the great pool of African talent present in 2010s Hollywood. Secondly, and this is a very personal opinion, I do not believe that the requirement for the Egyptian actor to be an English speaker should have been all too rigid. The role of Ra, for example, executed in ancient Egyptian tongue or Arabic tongue, would have given him a grander standing and aura. The scene where Horus and Beck visit his domain would have shown levels between the ancient god and the humans, where only the god Horus could understand his grandfather, whereas the human Beck would have remained completely oblivious to the tongue of this greater deity. Projects both old and new have shown that these solutions are not only functional but very practical. Take for example the film The Mummy 1999, which actually cast South African actor Arnold Vosloo as the Egyptian priest Imhotep, who majorly conversed in ancient Egyptian tongue and delivered a killer performance. Matter of fact, all love to Gerard Butler. I love his movies, I love his performances, even in this film. However, Arnold Vosloo would have killed as set in this film considering he has mastered the roles of villainy. 2020's Marvel's Moon Knight is yet another project that shows that you do not require an all-Egyptian casting to pull off a show that has an Egyptian backdrop. They were still very capable of casting their big-name draws such as Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke, and still balance it off with character actors such as the Egyptian May Kalamawi. As far as filming goes, more especially location scouting, their decision to take this production to Australia was so that they could take advantage of tax reliefs and save on money. However, upon study of the film's visuals, it is evident that both in the smaller and larger scale shots, green screens were used as a crutch to create the required atmosphere, which made every shot feel very artificial. Something that would have been overcome had the shooting been done on location if the scouting and subsequent filming locations would have selected an area closer to the north of Africa. At the end of the day, despite studios' wish to make bank off their productions, the ones that fail to do so fail to understand that their products are reliant on their audience. Fan backlash and critique to a film can be its saving grace or its undoing if not heeded. Case in point, the audience reaction to the initial Sonic trailer, which had the production company not stepped in and actually addressed the public outcry, I do not believe that they would be preparing to release their third entry into the franchise later this year. Realistically though, changing the designs of a CGI hedgehog cannot compare to the complete overhaul Gods of Egypt would require to save face amongst audiences. The bad faith that they had earned through their casting decisions, especially in the latter half of the 2010s, coupled with a very generic action-adventure plot that rehashes some very familiar set pieces, scenes and dialogue, served as the diabolical recipe that ultimately killed off any chances for the success of Gods of Egypt. And that is all I have for you in this video. Feel free to share what you thought about the movie. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more content just like this. And till next time, it has been your soon to be favorite Uncle Omari, and I simply cannot wait to see you all in the next one.